Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm Revolver No Shorty. And today, we're going to be reviewing Cities of Magic. So, I'm not from Scout Comics, and I do like what Scout Comics does. One of the best things I reviewed last week, Pentagon of Horror, was one of theirs. Sorry, very loud bike going on outside. Anyway, yes, Scout Comics do great things, do interesting things, and this one grabbed me just from the title. Cities of Magic might as well be called urban fantasy, and that is a genre I really quite like, thoroughly enjoy, and read a lot about. Having a lot of fun of their motorbikes out there. But it kind of leans a little bit more heavily into the fantasy side of things for me. Yeah, it's still within some cities. It is literally American cities, which have been drastically changed by Magick. But it doesn't feel like the city part of it is that really important. Not so drastically changed by Magick. I'll give you a brief rundown of what this story is about. At some point, very close to our own time, an event happened where when electricity just stopped working. This caused quite a few problems. Planes fell out of the sky. Nuclear reactor safeguards stopped working. People couldn't check their TikToks. It was horrible. Lots of people died. And then over the next 150 years, we get a few pages briefly running down what happens when people discover magic, figure out how to use it to help people, and it becomes the replacement like technology. Very quickly, when you get to the modern day, it kind of cuts the idea that there are people in power who are using these abilities to dominate other people, much in the same way that happens now, but with like actual resources and capital. And yes, I could go on a whole anti-capitalist spree here, but I think there's other things worth talking about in this comic book. First off, we're going to start with a little bit of the background of when the magic becomes a thing, and it kind of leaches into the world in a form of liquid magic, as they call it. And this causes mutations and new things to grow. And one of these, quite clearly, is something very, very heavily, obviously, a centaur. Maybe not like from an actual horse, maybe a slightly different animal, but it's that whole quadrupedal lower body and then upper torso, very, very humanistic. And this made me think, well, there's a couple of different plot points you can use at this juncture. You could say that maybe this is not the first time this has happened. Maybe we have the stories of centaurs and they also reference minotaurs and other such things, because at some point in the far history of our planet, this has happened before. And those stories have kind of stayed with us for whatever reason, and now it's happening again. It could be that the magic actually has a slightly different property to it than we think. It isn't just random mutations. It could be that humanity, who remembers these stories from our distant past, even a century and a half and multiple generations ago, still kind of imbues them and understands that a world of magic would have magical creatures, and without even meaning to, we are creating the magical creatures we expect to see. Or the third option, when faced with a near infinite variety of possibilities when creating their own fantasy and magical world, the creators just went, or we could just use actual mythology. I don't know which one of those is true. I hope it isn't the third one, because the first two have a lot of options and could lead to some interesting stories, but they don't, unfortunately. My other criticism of this book is when we meet the main character, or one of the main characters, who is a person who seems to, well, not necessarily not believe in magic. Magic is a thing that happens, but he dismisses it. He thinks there's other answers out there. He has heard of this electricity, and he carries around an actual gun rather than using magic. And he gets pulled up on the fact that he seems to be believing in conspiracy theories. But one of these theories is the fact that electricity was a thing and could work. Yes, there's also a reference made to flat earthism, the fact that in this world you literally can't see the Earth from space because the magic doesn't allow that, and they don't have the technology to do it. But there's kind of like a mocking tone to the idea, and it comes across maybe that if you were going to take a real world analogy of it, it would be like, well, maybe some conspiracy theories are bad and silly to believe in, but there are other ones which are worth entertaining. And I'm not going to say that like literally every conspiracy theory has been disproven. It's not true. There are some things out there where people thought it was true and it turns out it was. Quite often it's usually people in powerful institutions experimenting on individuals who think they can get away with doing it. This kind of thing happens. People think it's like, oh, the government's going to be experimenting on people. Every once in a while that's happened, but it very rarely happens on the scale people think. It's usually much more targeted for minorities and the like. But in this, it feels like there was a chance to do something different. It feels like it was just a little bit too ambiguous. It was saying, well, there is some conspiracies that might be true, this other isn't. It's okay to mock them, but there's a sense of truth to it within the world building that we've seen. And I just think there's no particularly real way they could have gone in any one direction, which could have been better or worse than another direction. But I wish they had picked a direction. I wish they had just gone for something and tried to make a more definitive point. But with those criticisms in mind, this is still a great comic book. I love the fact that the 150 years worth of history is over like 6 pages. I like the fact that they do a lot more showing than telling. There's hardly any dialogue to them. It is just visual storytelling, and it's done really, really well. In fact, the artwork for it is fantastic. I love the coloring. It's slightly muted, but when the magic comes in, it's fantastical. The actual magic seems to work really effectively within the world, and it looks beautiful. The character designs, the costume designs, the world design, everything about the artwork is exactly what I want, and I like the writing between characters. It feels cool. I like the conversations that happen, even if I don't necessarily think the content is exactly what I want, but there's an awful lot to like about it. It's certainly one that I think is going to be worth picking up and carrying on reading, but I'm not like thoroughly excited, like, oh my God, I can't wait for the next issue. It's more that I want to see what happens next. I hope it's not going to disappoint me. That's it for today, though. I am going to be back tomorrow. Until then, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.